So there's an initiative, right? It's this thing. It's called the European. This is a European Citizens Initiative. So how these things work is basically if you have like something you want to propose, and if you have enough support for it, you can do so using these initiatives, right? As long as you meet the requirements, they'll have to look at it. They have to. I believe that the requirements are 1 million signatures from European residents. So residents in countries that are part of the European Union, residents in this case. And if you get 1 million signatures, you can show this to the parliament. And this is the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative. We talked about this quite some time ago. The idea being that certain companies make video games, and then they decide, you pay for them, right? They decide to shut down the servers, and you're left with nothing. You're left with like a brick, a digital brick, if you will. This has happened with many games. It's not the first time. This initiative calls for required publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union or related features and assets sold for video games they operate to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement of the side of the publisher. And the initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for said video game once they discontinue it, while leaving it in reasonable, functional, playable state. I think it's pretty clear of what they aim to debate here, right? Which is, we just want for publishers to be forced to leave the games in a functional state. If you bought a game, you want to play it, you could do so. And apparently PirateSoftware, Thor, I don't know his full name. I remember him months ago, like almost a year ago, just shitting on this because it's too complicated. First of all, this is not law. This is just an initiative to debate the subject, and then the Commission would take this and translate it into legislation. Or not. The goal here is to start a discussion and to present this to the Commission. Playable state does not mean that you own the IP of something. And PirateSoftware was shitting on this because, oh, look at MMOs. This should say online only single-player games, and it doesn't specify anything. What about multiplayer games? Probably starting an initiative in the EU would have a better effect, because it would address, the companies would have to deal with many more countries, right? If there's legislation about this. I think they were using the Crew as an example, but the goal is not to focus on one game, but to eventually make legislation for all games. And so PirateSoftware started shitting on this and going like, what about multiplayer games? And the initiative never said anything about multiplayer versus single player online, always single player game experiences, or any of that. It was specifically vague because it was meant to be applicable to any game. And so the idea being that if you have a multiplayer game and if you shut down the servers, you can have some way potentially to get people to host their own servers. PirateSoftware was like, these people know nothing about software development and game development. This is too hard because they might depend on third-party services. And my point, and many people's point on going forward with this initiative, is that it doesn't matter because this is not like retroactively applied. The purpose of this is to improve the practices of video game publishing. Frankly, it doesn't matter that it's hard, or it doesn't matter. You need to rethink. If it's hard, you need to rethink the way you do things. There's many games that ship with self-hosted options. You can host your own lobbies. And I frankly think that many games should have contingencies to allow for this thing, and they should be developed with plans for the end of life, with this sort of thing in mind. Like, if you can't play it multiplayer, just leave it playable. Doesn't matter if you can play with other people. Oh, but it has IP. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. As long as that's a different conversation. As long as you don't monetize someone else's IP, you should be able to play the video game you paid for. You know, if the company chooses to just turn off the servers. I'm sure there's like ways to think about this and to make reasonable demands and have like a grace period before the implementation of such legislation. This is not legislation, by the way. This is just an initiative to start talking about it. But it was shitting on it so profoundly that it's kind of almost using his community to brigade this, to make sure that this wasn't going forward, because he thinks it just doesn't agree with this. I woke up today and Charlie, Cr1tikal, I don't know if you guys know Charlie, had this video that apparently was pissed off with the...
Tough guy. You feeling lucky? Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Spirit fingers. Do you know why? Because it's been about 30 hours since I last slept, and I've done 3 different intros, all of which crash and burned, and I am off my gourd, so now I'm going
skill issue,
mode.
brother.
But, even in my sleep-deprived state,
This guy's ever... Yeah, but Charlie is a big YouTuber, so... And he has a bunch of stuff. He has, like, I believe, like, some comics that I was involved with. He makes like tournaments, so it's like a big time YouTube man. Hear what Charlie has to say.
I am still lucid enough to recognize how cattywampus the AAA gaming space has become. Like, the gaming industry has so many things that I have bitched and moaned about. Probably the biggest practice that I've been most vocal about, not exactly shy on, is the topic of you will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, if you don't own nothing when you buy something, then you don't steal nothing when you pirate something.
Ubisoft.
But anyway,
though this is my first video going over it, and I regret that now because I see it wasn't going as well as I thought it was. Admittedly, I didn't follow how successful the initiative was, only that it was aiming to do good for consumers. And that...
Yeah, basically you can't go wrong. You can argue and you can debate on whether like the specifics of such an initiative, how they would be implemented, how we can end up with, you know, laws that would, I don't know, even make it impossible for certain games to be made, because, but arguably the goal of the initiative is good and is in the best interest of consumers. But so the initiative has some merits, even though this is not even law, it's just the starting of the conversation.
And it was taking proper steps legally to get there, and it was going through all of the right channels. And now today I watched a video from the guy that's spearheading this. His name is Ross. He posted a video called The End of Stop Killing Games, where he's giving an update on where everything's at and how it's kind of at the finish line here, with a lot of failure to show for it, with only a few other chances to fight back. A lot of people don't even really know what this is because of people like PirateSoftware completely misrepresenting what the initiative was.
The thing is, the guy has a large audience all of a sudden, and then there was the World of Warcraft drama, which is just ridiculous. I don't even want to talk about that one. And people kept saying that he's a fucking narcissist and a know-it-all and refuses to accept when he's wrong and whatnot. It doesn't matter. But the fact is that over time, when this came about, he started releasing some videos, like clips from his stream and whatnot, completely missing the point of the initiative and treating this as if we were drafting legislation as he spoke. Like, as if we were in the midst of actually making laws to stifle, you know, video game development.
As a refresher, Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement to stop publishers from effectively destroying video games they have already sold to customers.
I'll pause right there. The simplest bare bones birthday suit butt-ass naked explanation for what this is. Stop destroying things that people have paid money to own.
There you go.
I think that is a very understandable, very reasonable take. Very agreeable. Now I want to quickly jump to a different spot in this video because I think it's important to have this in the beginning because it's something a lot of people have heard that comes from someone that is just wrong about it. It's the PirateSoftware portion. Ross is addressing the video PirateSoftware made many months ago.
Yeah.
Ross even says that he didn't plan on doing that because he didn't want to be seen as using this for drama farming because it would start to make the movement look less of like a legitimate initiative and more of just like drama
online,
content.
right? Yeah, and which is a legitimate position. It's like this guy was completely dismissing the movement, mischaracterizing it, and instead of wasting time and effort trying to address that, which has nothing to do with anything, it preferred to focus on the initiative itself. But the fact is that someone that has the audience as large as PirateSoftware has will have an effect on these sort of things, and people will think, you know, all kinds of wrong things about this initiative if they are part of that community and have, you know, zero critical thinking to just gobble up whatever he says. So I don't know. I think whenever your community starts being of a certain size, you have a different sort of responsibility to be, at least not to misrepresent things like that.
Type thing. But he finally starts talking about PirateSoftware here because it's at the end of the life cycle of this initiative and it's not looking promising, so he's willing to do anything to try and set the record straight and hopefully start getting more momentum back to the movement because the damage PirateSoftware did to it through his video was substantial.
This video came out right as we were building momentum. Then, except for one boost in Germany, the signatures started drying up like clockwork.
It's also tricky, by the way, I'm just gonna add it right there. It's also tricky to say that it was because, at the same time, right? It was because of PirateSoftware video that the signatures started, you know, drying up. But the fact is, one could make the argument that when you're trying to get an initiative off the ground, it doesn't help to just make a video shitting on it for the wrong reasons and mischaracterizing it at the same time, where people would be maybe inclined to support the initiative.
Does not understand what Stop Killing Games is. Here it is in his words.
I also think he does, but to him it seems like it's more important to make his point than to address that.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically, we don't want single-player games.
No,
it's not. No, it's not. It's one of the components.
To have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change.
That's one of the components, but it's not.
They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player game.
They do not need to be specific.
That do not need a server to support them.
No.
And as much as they want it to be about specifically games, where it is a single-player game.
See, this is the kind of bullshit. It's like, is misrepresenting the thing. It's not just single-player games with online component. Yes, those are a big part of it, but this is meant to be applied to all games and the way games are developed and published across the board.
That has always online functionality.
Which is also his objection to this, by the way. It's also PirateSoftware's objection to this whole thing.
It would impact every live service game that exists. Instead of just targeting single-player... always online games.
No, that's not what it is.
It's not.
Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but
Exactly.
nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression. It's the first line on the website.
Let's see what it says. Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. It seems pretty self-explanatory. I don't know. Any game, it doesn't matter which game it is. Any game. It's not just single play. I understand that PirateSoftware's whole objection to this thing is the multiplayer aspect of this initiative, or how hard it would be to implement this sort of thing. But one, this would not be, probably would not be retroactively applied, and second, it's not as hard as he paints it.
Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. But the movement includes all this stuff from earlier, and he was mostly talking about the initiative.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it has an objection against the multiplayer aspects being, according to him, and I think I'm not misrepresenting his point either. I think his point is that there's so many, it's developing, for instance, an MMO is so complex, and like the backend might have so many different third-party services and whatnot, that it makes it very difficult to make like self-contained thing that they could ship and provide to the players once they turn off the servers. Furthermore, some companies would want to kill their games in order to sell the new ones, right? And so forget about how complicated it would be to distribute the binaries and whatnot for the backend for the servers, and all the intricacies of the databases and whatnot. Some companies straight up don't want to do this because they want to sell you, you know, MMO2 instead of MMO1, and they want you to stop playing that game because that game is cannibalizing on their new game that perhaps has new shiny monetization things and whatnot. Do you know what I mean? But I think the point still stands. One, it's not as hard as PirateSoftware paints it, despite this constant appeal to authority that I don't understand why. It's like, just because you know how the sausage is made doesn't mean that people should be forced to eat the sausage as it's made. Like, it's like saying, I know how you make sausages with, also an expert in European law, exactly. But it's like, just because I'm a sausage. Just because I'm a sausage, guys. Just because I'm an expert in making sausages with asbestos doesn't mean that the consumers should not be worried about consuming asbestos in their sausages. Do you know what I mean? This will give me cancer. And you go like, you gotta eat it. You know how hard it would be to make it without asbestos?
Well, the short version is the initiative is about requiring publishers to have end-of-life plans for games they've sold to customers in the future. So when they shut them down, customers can continue running them without their support. So that's one thing Thor doesn't understand, but he also seems to think this is about converting multiplayer games to single player.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around
Why?
single player.
Why would he think that the goal was to convert multiplayer games to single-player games? Who told him that? Like, the simplest example that he might not agree with, but suppose you have Lineage 2, right? You have the company stops the game, stops the servers, and suddenly, yes, it might be a subscription model or whatnot, but the people sometimes they buy, or World of Warcraft even, you buy the game, you buy a subscription, and then they just shut off the servers and you're left with nothing. Even though you bought the game, you bought the expansions, you bought everything, right? But now there's nothing. And the point is not, like Thor is saying, the point is not to convert everything to single player. The point is ship the fucking binaries for the server, or give people access to something that they can take and do whatever they want with it, as long as they don't monetize IP that belongs to the company, right? So as long as they don't take the servers and then sell the game to other people as if it was theirs, which is not the point, they could just run servers for themselves or for their friends. Hell, I play WoW Classic alone. Single player. What's wrong with that? And there's also plenty of private servers as well. Clearly, people are not as stupid as they seem, as they wants to make them seem, and it's not as hard as it seems to make servers work at the end of the life of the life cycle of a game, right? But anyway,
building everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down.
no, you make the server, you go into a raid, you get clapped, that's it. If you don't have friends to play with you in your private server, you go into the raid and you get clapped, or you don't do the raids, that's it. Private servers have been a thing forever. WoW specifically has so many private servers and has had forever. Exactly. And it's not like... And they're illegal as well, because it's not like... Blizzard took their sweet time to realize that people wanted that experience. Even... They even... In one of the BlizzCons, one of the conferences, they even told people would be asking, are you planning on making classic servers? Like, the game as it was back in the day, in the beginning. And they have the goal to turn to people and say, you think you want that, but you do not want that. Because the quality of life that we, improved over time is so great that you needed to, bang on people's doors to beg them to go with you to a dungeon or whatnot. But that was exactly what people wanted. Surprise, surprise. Right? But this stance that is taking here, it's almost as like, leave my billionaires alone. It's that kind of vibe. It doesn't matter if it's multiplayer, single player, local co-op. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If it's like DRM, online only, it does not matter. The point of the initiative is all games need to be playable. Doesn't matter.
And suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
It's not.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single-player experience.
They would not.
The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live
Playable doesn't mean balanced.
service game playable single-player offline? No, dude.
Correct. No.
This part is more confusing than Finnegan's Wake, because nowhere in anything on Stop Killing Games has this even been like a talking point from anyone besides PirateSoftware. I don't know where he pieced this puzzle together. Like I don't get it. Like, if I'm gonna try and like really reach here and give like a charitable explanation for this take,
I think I have an
maybe he's
idea.
extrapolating based on the idea that if publishers have to have end-of-life plans for their games, that includes MMOs, where once the game is getting sunset, you're pulling the plug on it, you would then need to turn the game over to the community in a playable state, an accessible state, like give the code to them. Thus, it'd turn it into a single-player experience, so
That's
the
the dumb
onus
part.
would be on the developers to rebalance their game to be a single-player experience for them? I guess. I have...
It's a reach, isn't it? It's a reach. My guess is that he looks at it and sees, wait, I don't want to be... If I'm a game developer, the fact that this responsibility would be put on publishers, it would make extra work that would stifle game development. I'm guessing that's his fixation. But the point still doesn't stand, because no one is asking for a balanced game. People wanna run the server, run the game, connect to the server, and play the fucking game. But I suppose it could disagree with that. It could say, oh, as a game developer, I don't want to have the responsibility of sunsetting my games. Right? It could make that argument. It would be, at least it would be more honest. It would be more honest than whatever this is. Whatever this is just taking the initiative, mischaracterizing it, and then leading everyone. People are fucking idiots. I'm sorry, but you're lovely, but you're also fucking idiots. People are not like casual gamers. Don't go off and go like, oh, my game publisher is, handing me a shit sandwich and I love it. There's no other way to do this. People are like, people need to be told what's up, what's the problem, here's how you can help, and look at this, analyze it and see if you agree with it or not. And it doesn't help that this idiot not Charlie, the Thor, it doesn't help that it mischaracterizes it for his audience. Not just his audience, but anyone that searches on YouTube for this thing. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't help. You can make your argument, you can disagree, but just making shit up in the midst of trying to justify your own point of view, it doesn't help. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't even make anything online connected. Yeah, but you don't need to be. His point could still stand. You could still make an argument that if I ever made an online game, I wouldn't want this responsibility. You could make that case, right? But don't mischaracterize things so that people listen to you and go like, oh, this is bullshit. I don't want to have anything to do with this, right? That's just stinky.
Because Stop Killing Games at no point ever says any of these multiplayer games need to be converted to single player.
Yeah.
That really is outlandish. Why would the developers need to rebalance the game? They would just turn over the code to the community and just it'd be in that state. They're no longer responsible for balancing the game. That's the whole point. They're not.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single player games.
Oh, he's so close. He's so close to getting it.
It is vague, and because of that, it will impact everyone.
He never has that light bulb moment. Well, he is correct in that statement. It's almost as if that's not what the initiative is asking for.
I know this part is once again just reinforcing that he doesn't know what the Stop Killing Games movement is about, but I have to just show you this because it is so fascinating, because
I think he knows. I just think he can't articulate his position without mischaracterizing it. I think it's just a skill issue. I think it's a skill issue. He doesn't want to concede his point, so whatever comes out this way, mischaracterization of whatever it is, because he wished that in order for his point to stand, he wished that the initiative was only about single player games with online components. Unfortunately, it's not. It's about all games. It's not even lawmaking, we're just starting a conversation, for fuck's sake. He wants his point to stand, and so this is what it comes out. I don't know.
What does he say in his big YouTube video with over 1 million views that he had time to research?
If we're trying to kill off the practice of developers putting together a live service game, pitching it as a single player experience, and then taking away support in the future.
Now he's changed it again and is making up how it's about single player games are advertised. What is he doing?
It needs to be specific about the business practice it's trying to defeat, which is...
Was this a genuine question? Was this a YouTube video he had time to research and he did so? Or was it like we do over here? Was it a stream where there was just stream of consciousness, exactly what like what I'm doing, and then he just cut it up and put it on YouTube? I know you had time to just research things and cut them properly and even add to it, but I think this was just a stream, wasn't it? I think it was just the highlights of the stream.
Just specifically companies that are doing this under the guise of it being a single player game, but adding online only functionality that is not necessary and doesn't add any gameplay elements. That's the problem.
No, that's not it at all.
It's not.
This is a really strong section from Ross here, because the clips that you saw moments ago were from his stream. When he took more time to watch it and digest it, he still came back in that video misrepresenting it. Like,
Oh, so the video was not from another stream? I thought like the video was him digesting it after talking about it and then using highlights from the stream to make a video. But if he did that like standalone, that's even worse, I think. I think it's just a big dumbass. I don't know what to tell. Just a bit of a dumbass. Yeah.
If we don't like the idea of live service games as a whole, I get it. Don't play live service games then. Don't agree to those terms.
No, he's getting a new thing wrong now.
What?
We're not against them existing. We're against them being destroyed with no recourse for the customer.
Yeah, because you... What he's saying is the same fucking argument of like, imagine you have poor working conditions, right? You have shit pay and it's very hard work and you can't live off that, right? And then someone comes to you and says, well, you're free to not do it if you don't want to. But it's like, yeah, you're free to starve. You're free to starve. Like, you're free not to accept it. But like, live service, the point is not that. Is that you're still paying for the game. You're still paying for the game in a sense. And many of the live service games, you purchase them. And you want, if they sunset the game, to be able to play the game that you paid for. That's it. After the game is sunset, if they no longer support it, just give people the service. Or, at the very least, if you're developing a game within the development process, you would have to think about sunsetting the game, right? Instead of just, oh, the game no longer exists. Fuck you. I also think that if you buy a license for a product and they destroy the product, we should require them to, you know, making the product still playable so that your license would be, you know, still valid. Because now you have a license for a product that doesn't exist. You know, that's the whole point, I
The
think.
problem is not with licenses failing to inform people. Blizzard says they can take away your purchase for no reason. That sounds pretty clear to me. Our problem is those terms are so hostile to consumers.
The problem is not that the terms are there or people don't understand them. The problem is that we're against those terms, right? It's like the whole monetization thing that we watched the other day about the online microtransaction things, where some people made complaints about this online horse MMO, whatever, that was blatantly had so many microtransactions and macrotransactions and was targeting vulnerable groups like kids that don't know how money works in a sense and can be easily manipulated. It's not that, and then you could say, oh, you know, you just have to make sure that the terms of service are there, and the parents, if they don't read them, it's their fault. No, the point is that we're against the terms of service. We're against those terms. We reject those terms. The initiative is about changing the industry so that they can't put those terms in. Like, Blizzard reserves the right to terminate this agreement at any time for any reason or for no reason, with or without notice to you. And we are saying that we want this to stop existing. We want this to be illegal. That's the only thing.
And the medium that this should be taken off the table entirely. This needs
Yeah.
regulation. Forget video games. If you look at basic commerce for hundreds of years, when you paid money, you either got to keep what you paid for, or if it was a service, you were told when your access ends. The vast majority of online-only games do neither of those.
He's exactly right.
Yeah. You could make a case for, if you make a video game that has an online component, you could say, okay, you were paying for 1 year of this game, after which, poof, it's gone. And then if you don't agree, that's on you, right? But these games are just, buy the game, and then one day, poof. And then you're like, but I paid for the game. Even with WoW, we could use that example, right? You could say, pay us a subscription. You know, you're renting access to this content. So you're licensing, you have a license to access this content. But the problem is that you have to buy the expansion packs as well, right? So the question becomes, what are you buying? Do the expansion packs have expiration dates? Because then you're paying for it. We could go into the multiplayer rabbit hole, right? But the point is that these practices are shitty as well. And we want to end these practices. We want to say, okay, if we own nothing, if we're just renting access to this MMO, and you don't want to provide the service so that we can play it at the end, then you have to make the license clear about that. It's not just about misleading. It's about, it should be illegal to make licenses that don't have that specified, I think. The fuck do I know?
Try to tell me that every studio needs to run their live service game indefinitely or not want to run one at all, then no one's going to run them.
Oh no! He wheeled out that line about publishers having to support the game forever. He was literally watching the video earlier where it says it won't.
What the initiative would not do: require publishers to give up intellectual property rights, require publishers to give up source code, require endless support. Yeah, that's not the point.
Do that in big letters. That wasn't enough. We just can't stop gamers from going there, even when we spell it out. This is for the UK to sign a government petition to bring this issue before Parliament. Though, keeping it real, I'm not terribly optimistic about this one, since the government response has been a mess by every definition. But the one that has a lot of power, so much so I think it could change the course of gaming history,
It's the European Union one that I showed you guys. I'm gonna link it again in a
is
bit.
the European Citizens Initiative. Now, I said I'm approaching this like a time traveler because with the trajectory we're on, these are both going to fail. Again, this one is crazy powerful, but the hurdle we just couldn't get past was that it requires 1 million signatures from
It's a lot of
citizens of
people.
EU countries. And we've only made it just under halfway. What
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize is that in the EU especially, it's almost a state of lawlessness regarding the practice of game destruction. Is that the vast majority of games with an online requirement say they can be terminated at any time for
You and Ubisoft or its licensors may terminate this agreement at any time for any reason. Fuck you, and you will thank us and love it.
any reason. Or Blizzard likes to say any or no reason. But uh-oh, according to the EU Commission, that might be a violation of Directive 93/13 EEC, which protects consumers against unfair terms in consumer contracts.
Yep.
So if that term is unfair, that means that part of the contract is null and void.
He goes on to explain how powerful that can be because of what a mess that is. Because there is so much gray area with how the video games currently operate in regards to those protections, it would be a legal headache that would require an analysis of the laws or implementation of new laws that could lead to, hopefully, an improvement when it comes to
For us, the
gaming.
consumers.
So the big hurdle,
And honestly, the
was
developers as
signatures,
well.
needing 1 million, and currently it's at like 460,000, so it doesn't reach the threshold. I've been very vocal from the very beginning about how little faith I have in petitions, but that's just from the perspective of an American. In America, petitions are more worthless than toilet paper. You're better off just writing what you want on a note to Santa Claus and shipping it to the North Pole than you are doing anything with a petition in
Right.
this country. I don't know how different it is in the EU.
In the EU, if you make a petition and if you have motion, if you have enough people, they have to take it seriously. They have to. Even if you complain, if enough people complain to your, local consumer protection network that exists, they have to take it seriously and they have to analyze the situation. Look at the horse game. You remember the horse MMO that had the microtransactions? Couple of Swedish parents went to the filed complaints against this company, and the EU went like, "What's up? What is this about? We need to fix this."
Maybe it really is this powerful there that could lead to substantial change and improvement when it comes to games and preservation and all of what we've already talked about. Hopefully, I mean, that's really all that's left for the Stop Killing Games initiative, which sucks, but that's the position that it's in, unfortunately. And I wanted to talk about it because I really want to see something change with the games industry. I
You
have
and
said
us
that so
all.
many times recently, but it's just
We all
it's
want
in such a
something to-
sorry state. I mean, I'm talking big budget AAA space. Indies, I think, are absolutely crushing it, absolutely golden right now in the golden age of indie games. But overall, in the big budget games and the way the industry keeps pushing things, it sucks. So I wanted to talk about Stop Killing Games here. Hopefully things can turn around and maybe a huge W's around the corner for the Stop Killing Games initiative. We'll see. But
Yeah.
anyway, I want to commend Ross for his hard work spearheading all of this for so long.
Which right now is sitting at 556,000. signatures. It needs 1 million to be heard. For a European citizen initiative to be valid, it must obtain at least 1 million valid signatures and meet the minimum threshold in at least 7 countries. You just basically just input your country of residence, your nationality, your name, and your and then it shows according to, depending on like the country, I don't know if it's Croatia, for instance, it will show your respective identification, whatever they use for identifying people, right? Germany, Malta, it's like an identity card. Portugal, it's a citizen card, or the old identity card, that sort of thing. So you just fill this out, you press sign, and it's done. Hello? Did you like the video? If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, press the... If you have the bell, press the bell. Otherwise, you know, you don't get the juicy stuff next time. Is this how you do it? What do you mean, no? Oh, also, love your face. Bye. Bye. Click the things.